So, it's been a while since I last recorded a video for my MitMac Games channel. And a couple reasons. One, during the summer, I don't spend a lot of time in front of the computer. I do have a full-time job, so I do this in the evening, and summers are busy here in Minnesota. It's not warm for that long, so I get outside and take advantage of it. But the other reason is because I decided to sit and focus on one area really and do more of a deep dive into learning aspects of Blender and Unity. Previously to this, I would dive in, I would watch some videos maybe on the particle system or armatures or shaders. I would learn some things, I'd apply them, I'd make some cool looking stuff, and then I would kind of move on. And when I came back to have to do work on that area again, it was always a struggle. I didn't really know it that well. I knew it enough and could follow steps to make things work, but it always felt like work. And I would always have to review some videos or go back to some of the things I did and spend quite a bit of time figuring out, again, how to do things. So what I decided to do this fall when I got back into it is to really focus on one area. So I decided to focus on creating armatures, animations in Blender and bringing them into Unity and really doing it over and over and over again, because really that's what it takes to get good at something and really to remember all the steps. In order to get all the steps to create an armature correctly and all of the inverse kinematics and actually doing the animations so they look good, really there's a lot of steps to it, and I kept having to look back and read my notes to figure out what the next step was. So I sat down and I just created an armature, created some animations, brought them into Unity, and then did that over and over and over again. And it takes probably making 30 or 40 of them before you really feel comfortable with all the steps and really understand what's going on. And lately, I have dug into a little bit more in Unity to actually make some edits to my animations in Unity, which I hadn't really done before. So as I was trying to do some different things, maybe make a character hop and stop, or stomp, or leap, or do some other types of things besides just run at a consistent pace, I found I needed to understand a little bit more of how Unity treats animations. So I'm going to be doing a couple of videos here and show and go through some of those more deeper dive into animations in Unity. I do have several videos that go over making armatures, mapping them to a character in Blender, bringing them into Unity, and doing just your basic walk or run. So if you don't know how to do those things, you can go back and look at those videos. I put the links in the details here on the video. But if you've already done that and maybe want to take the next step forward, stay tuned and watch this video where I cover animation events, both editing animation and adding animation events, which requires you to edit the animation. So let's get to it. So to start out, I'll kind of go over what the setup currently is. So I've made this character in Blender. It's a kind of big, heavy robot, and I have brought it into Unity, and we can see I have this imports folder, and I have this mesh called Fat Robot. And the robot has an armature, and it has two animations that I have made in Blender, and of course they're brought in. And if you don't know how to do that or are confused about how to do that, you can watch my other videos that go through that in a lot of detail. But I'm assuming you have your character and animation in Unity. So what we have is we have this walk animation. So there's a couple things that we need to know if we want to actually do something with this walk animation besides just the basics. So we have the basics. If I click on my fat robot and we go into animations here, we can see each animation, and if I click on walk, I can click loop time, which of course I need to have this checked if we want it to loop the animation over and over again as I move the character forward. So it has my total number of frames here. But what if I want to actually modify that animation? I've never made animations in Unity. I've done some basic editing, which I'm kind of going to go over today. So what I can do is if I double click on this Armature walk, and I have two monitors here, it brought up this animation tab that I'm going to drag over onto my console. So what we can see is we see all of the movements, scaling and rotation on all of my armature elements and each frame item. So what I can do is if I select my character, and first of all, I have to have a couple things. One, I have to have a avatar, which of course you need to make when you bring it in. Secondly, I need to create this robot controller and have it assigned to my character. And in my animator, I need to, of course, drag the walk over into my animator and hook it up so when this scene launches, it will start my character walking. If all those things are in place, and they all need to be in place, when I double click on this and view this, and I have this selected, I can grab, so I'm going up here, I'm clicking, and I can drag this forward, and I can watch my character animate for each frame. Because that's going to be important to know what my character is doing on each frame if I want to make a modification. So the first issue is that we have these elements here. This one is a option to add an event to one of my frames, but you'll notice they're grayed out. And they're grayed out because Unity does not let me edit an animation that's brought into Unity from an outside source. It's read-only. So what I need to do if I want to actually make a modification is I can't make a modification to this directly. What I need to do is make a copy of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that animation that I want to make the copy of, and I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate that. Oh, actually, it's Control D because I haven't done this a lot. Again, if you haven't done this a lot, you kind of can't remember what to do. So it's actually Control D will actually make a duplicate of that. And you'll notice I have another armature walk up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit F2, and I'm going to rename this to Fat Robot Walk. This is another thing I tend to do is you're working on getting something going, and so you do the copy. You have a generic name like Armature Walk, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it up here into my animations so it's together under my other animation files. And then pretty soon I have a bunch of generic animations, and I can't remember which one goes with which. So I would suggest when you do this to rename it right away so it is very specific to whatever animation that you're working on. So in the future, you remember what's what. All right, so now what we have to do is we have to go to our animator, and we want to use this animation, not this animation, because this one was from our imported element. So I'm going to delete this, going to drag our new animation over. So now we have that. And I am going to go up here and double click on this. So now you'll notice that these guys are no longer grayed out. So I'm going to come back to my scene. I'm going to select my robot. Again, it's really the same animation, except now it's a copy that I'm allowed to edit. So when we come along here and watch my robot, you'll notice that there are 2 frames here where he really doesn't move. His hand's moving, but his feet are not moving. Because what I'm going to do is I want him to stomp, and I want him to not move forward, and I don't want his feet to move while he's stomping. Because when he's walking, we want him to move his legs, stomp, stop, lift his legs, move, stomp, stop. So what I've got here is I got 2 frames, and I did this in Blender, that I made him stomp. So one thing we're going to do is I want to make that stomp a little bit longer. And so what I can do is I can actually edit these frames inside Blender. So if I come in here and, oops, let's see, it's this one. I have to be in this box. I'm going to box in all of these and come down below. And if we scroll down, we can see all of these are selected. And I'm going to click in here and I'm going to drag. And I'm actually going to create 2 new frames. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and I'm going to select these items. You can see they're all selected. I'm going to copy them, Control C. I'm going to come over here, Control V, come over here, Control V. So now what I've done is I've copied this frame and I've duplicated it for 3 frames. So he moves, stomp, 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 and then he starts moving again. Now he comes up here, stomp. Now you notice these 2 frames are the same. So I'm going to come in here, scroll over a bit, grab all these, and I'm going to drag these over. 1, 2, come in here, grab these, copy, go over frame, paste, go over frame, paste. All right, so now what we have is he moves, stomp, he moves, stomp, and he moves. And you'll notice that it modified our frame count to the correct number. All right, so let's look to see how this is going to look when we run it in our game. So what I have is I have a script that's assigned to him. Come over here, we can see I have a fat robot script that I've made before. It's a bunch of items that aren't very important, except that we have this run speed, the speed that he actually moves. Because of course, as the animation plays, I have to move him forward around the scene, because that's the point, and he has to move at the correct speed to match up with his feet as he moves, so it doesn't look like he's sliding one way or the other. So when we run this, so we have our stomping, which is good, but you'll notice that the problem is he doesn't stop moving when he stomps. So it looks like when he stomps, he's sliding. So what we need to do is when that frame hits that we are stomping, we need my script has to stop him from moving. So how do we do that? So what we can do is we can create a event. Let's go back to our scene. Let's click on our animation. And what we're going to do is we're going to add an event. But before we can add an event, we need to have a function in our script that we've assigned to our mesh to be able to call when that event fires. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag over my project here so we can take a look at the code. And what I've done is on my fat robot controller, which is the one that is used for controlling my robot movement, I have 2 functions that I've made, and they need to be public functions. They can't be private functions. They need to be public functions that are named whatever you want. I called one stop moving forward and one start moving forward. And what this is going to do is it's going to set two Boolean variables. Pause moving true when I want to stop, and pause moving false when I want to get going again. And it's a pretty basic script. On the update, if I'm not pause moving, I am going to move its position forward. Basic function that's going to transform the direction and move him at the run speed times time delta time. Just the normal code that would normally move my object forward, but if I'm paused moving is true, it will not call this, so he will stop moving. So let's drag him back over there. And what we want to do is we want to add an event. So let's select our guy. Let's move him forward. And here's why we have to know the frame that we want to do it. So right there is when his foot lands and he stomps and then he starts moving there. So that first frame when he stomps, we're going to click this little guy called add event. And you'll notice there's a little blue box starts there. And I'm going to come over here, and it's important that a couple things are there. One, you have to have your script assigned to the object that is connected to the event that you're currently looking at. And if that is true, it's going to show me all of the public functions available to assign it to. So I'm going to assign it to stop moving forward. And then I'm going to come and select him again. And when he wants to start moving forward, I'm going to start there. And you can kind of play around with this because to get it to actually look that he starts to move at the right time, it's either going to be this frame or the next frame. I'm going to try this frame. So let's say start moving forward. Now we're going to come here where in his other foot stomps. Boom. All right, he's not moving. Going to add an event. We're going to select stop moving forward. We're going to come forward. Select him again. Move forward. Right there. We are going to add an event. We're going to call him start moving forward. All right, let's go back to our game and let's run it. There we go. Looks much better. So what we have is he is moving, and every time it hits that frame, it's going to call the function stop moving forward, and I will stop his forward motion so it looks like he's stomping. All right. So just to kind of summarize, what we need to do in order to achieve this is to, one, we need to make a copy of our animation in order to edit it. I could have added these frames inside of Blender, but it's kind of handy inside of Unity because I can play around with my animation a bit as I'm watching it. And if I want maybe the stomp to last longer, I could add another frame. If I want it shorter, I could go back and delete a frame. I can do these things inside of Unity instead of having to go back to Blender, making the change and bring it in. Because sometimes when I bring in animations after making changes, I have to actually remove the whole object. I'm not sure how and when Unity updates all of the elements of an animation, but it doesn't always seem to work and can be kind of a pain. So getting comfortable with editing your animations and at least seeing them and running through them in Unity is an important first step to going beyond just your standard walking or running where they're doing the same thing over and over and over again. So hope you've learned something on this video. I know I learned quite a bit playing around with this. So I'm going to make a follow-up video to this, and in that video we're going to talk about actually being able to control pausing and speeding up or slowing down our animations through code. Because in order to achieve some other different aspects, we may want to do that. And I'm going to work on making a leaping robot that's going to leap down from some other generic height. And so what we need to do is we need to control and even pause the animation from running for a certain period of time. What if I wanted to, instead of stomping and adding frames, I could have actually paused the video when his foot hit instead of adding a number of frames. So then I could actually control how much of a stomp or how long he stomps within the code itself. A little more flexible, but thought I'd start with this. This is kind of the first step, and we'll go from there. So keep watching my videos on MitMac Games. Again, if any of this is confusing and you need to go over it in more detail of all these steps, please see some of my previous videos. And thanks for watching.